Hello, everybody out. Welcome to the 67th episode of Shochu'sday. I'm reporting live from Baltimore, Maryland, at a very close friend's house. And Stephen is in a very odd place. Where are you, Stephen?
I am in quarantine in Fukuoka.
That is an odd place to be.
I left New York City Wednesday night in the middle of the huge torrential rainstorm. You and I were having drinks at Dublin House with Philip Duff.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's right.
During a torrential rainstorm, I got in a taxi at 7:30.
It was legit bad.
Yeah, it was very bad. I got in a taxi at 7:30 for a 10:30 flight. I got to the airport about 8:30, so it was about an hour drive. And it then took me an hour to check in at the Singapore Airlines counter, and I was the second person in line. It took me an hour to check in because I was apparently the first foreign resident of Japan ever to take the flight from JFK to Singapore to transfer to Japan. So they had to figure out all of the paperwork. They had no idea what documentation they needed to allow me to get on the flight. So there were multiple calls to the, who knows where. And like the manager was involved and everything else. And then all of my luggage was overweight. The Singapore Airlines.
How many bottles did you bring back? Because I know you have at least 4 bottles of the good stuff that nobody can get.
True. But those didn't come back with me. Those are in storage.
They're in storage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's your secret.
Undisclosed location in the state of Maryland. But what happened was so this is the longest commercial flight in the world. JFK to Singapore is 18 and a half hours. And they have very strict weight limits because I guess they only fuel the plane to the number of people that are going to be on it plus their luggage on some sort of formula. Okay. And so one of my suitcases was close to 40 kilograms. So I had to completely repack my luggage.
That's a human. That's a human right there. Yeah.
I know. And so I had to repack my luggage. They let me go a touch over on one of my checked bags over the maximum limit, which I think is like 32 or 33 kilograms. And then because one of my carry-ons was only 5 kilograms, where the max weight for a carry-on was 7. So that's how they allowed they credited me, right?
Oh, geez.
So this is in the middle of Ida hitting New York City.
I know.
That's rain.
It was dangerous. We were driving through standing water to get back to my hotel. I was like, oh, geez, this is not good.
They boarded the plane essentially on time. And when we got on the plane, they said, sorry, we don't know when we can leave.
Oh.
We sat on the plane for 2.5 hours, 2 hours before we could depart the gate. They said they negotiated with the ground crew or with the air traffic control. They're going to let them fly out. So about 1 a.m., maybe 1:15, we take off. There was so much water standing everywhere. I'd never flown in conditions like this.
You were hydroplaning, but you were actually
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then as soon as we hit the cloud cover, it was like one of those Final Destination movies or something. Like the amount of turbulence that we went through to get through the clouds in the remnants of Ida was just terrifying. Yeah. But then once we got to go above the cloud cover, we just headed east and flew over Greenland and we, it actually goes that way. It goes around to the east rather than to the west. And I got 7 hours of sleep on the flight plus watched 5 movies. That's how long the flight was.
Damn.
Yeah. So,
glad
and then
made it.
When I got to Singapore, it was a 20-hour layover.
Right. And you couldn't, they basically put you in jail.
Somebody fully gowned with a complete face shield escorted me from the gate to the terminal hotel, where I was then escorted by another person to my room. And then I was not allowed to leave my room until they came to pick me up 45 minutes before my flight.
Public enemy number 1.
At least they had television and the bed was comfortable. And I got three meals as part of the room price. Every 6 hours you get no alcohol.
Come on. Really? How else are you supposed to tolerate that bullshit?
No alcohol. I took some naps. I read a book. I watched the Paralympics. It was fine. I managed. Then the flight to Fukuoka. Well, when I get to the gate in Singapore to fly to Fukuoka, they said, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Lyman from America?" I was, "Yeah, yes." They said, "Can you describe your suitcases? Because we can't find one of them."
Where'd they send it?
Well, they didn't send it anywhere, it turns out, but they couldn't find it. So I described both of the suitcases. The chief purser on the plane, he came to my seat just shortly before takeoff, and he said, "In my entire career at Singapore Airlines, I've never heard of this happening. I'm so sorry."
So one of your bags didn't make it.
One of my bags didn't make it. But when I landed in Fukuoka, there was a ground staff waiting for me, and they said, "We found your bag. It'll come on the next flight," which is next Thursday. Because there's one flight a week between Singapore and Fukuoka right now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, fine. But basically, I left New York City Wednesday night. I arrived in Fukuoka Saturday morning. That's how long a trip it was.
And now what's your quarantine situation like?
Then it's 2 weeks in quarantine. I've got an app on my phone. Actually, two apps on my phone. One is the Cocoa app, right, which is the contact tracing app that's been around for a while. And the other one is called My SOS, which is basically I have to check in my location every day. There are random video calls.
Branded. Okay.
Yeah. Then there are I have to answer a health survey every day. And then there are random video calls with an AI. So I have to show myself in place.
To a robot.
To a robot, yeah. And then apparently the humans do sometimes call, but they haven't yet. So I'm in day 4, I guess. It starts the day after you arrive. So I arrived Saturday. It started Sunday. Now it's Wednesday here. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is day 4. So I've got 10 days after this. So a week from Saturday, I get out of COVID jail. Even though I had a negative PCR leaving the States and a negative PCR upon arrival in Fukuoka.
Of course. And you could get a negative PCR every day for the next 11 days and they still wouldn't let you out of COVID jail.
Yeah. But I'm getting a lot of work done.
Power of positive.
It's actually, it's pretty great, actually.
And the reason why I'm so interested in this, everybody, is because I have to deal with the same thing as soon as I go back. So I'm just kind of trying to mentally prepare myself for this, which is why I'm thinking right now. At
least you get to fly into Tokyo, right? You don't have the transfer.
It's a direct shot. I don't have to deal with the transfer. Tokyo's dealt. Anna has dealt with this before. I'm sure.
Yeah, and I certainly could have flown into Tokyo, but then I'd either have to stay there for 2 weeks in a business hotel, or I'd have to find private transportation to Fukuoka, which would be about a 15-hour drive. So just wasn't worth it.
No, because you
can just take a car service.
In a hotel for 14 days.
Yeah, you could just take a car service from the airport, though, right?
Yeah, I'm going to take the car service. It's going to cost me about $400, I think, and at least I'll get to quarantine at home, which is what the goal is. But
it's nice to quarantine at home because I got all my stuff here.
Yeah, and
good to have my stuff.
You're allowed to have alcohol,
which is that's right.
Really the main thing that's going to get us through.
Yeah, I think when Evan Gowan came back, when he basically came to Japan, he finally got his visa situation sorted, and he came in. They had a 3-day mandatory waiting in a government-approved hotel.
Yep, and then
there's no alcohol. Now, once the 3 days of that was over, he could go to a regular hotel, and then he could go out to the Kombini and get
basically choose his own adventure after that. Yeah, he was able to choose he could basically go pretty much everywhere, but as long as it was, if he was going to travel anywhere, it had to be by private car. So he stayed near the airport. He just moved to a nicer hotel. Yeah. Poor guy spent his own birthday in quarantine.
Sure.
Despite
but anyway,
that's the tests and everything. But yeah,
the difficulties of my international travel are not the topic of today's show. But,
no, it's true, but it is very interesting. I think for a lot of people in Japan who are watching, because they're like, "Oh, do I want to go home?" Yeah, you're gonna have to deal with this on the way back in. But
Yeah.
so anyways, the topic of today's show, actually, before we get there, because we did say we were going to talk about this first, we do have a Japan Distilled podcast episode dropping next at the beginning of next week, but maybe we should talk a bit about the last one. What was the last one about?
Yeah, last week was cold shochu service. So how to serve the different ways of drinking shochu with cold dilution, so ice or cold water or soda, that sort of thing. And we get into some details about what styles express best, what ways, and that kind of thing. But then this coming week, we do your favorite style, which is hot service.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So
we broke it into 2 episodes because we have a lot to say.
We do. And I think it's more valuable that way because we can go into more detail. So I am looking forward to the reactions to both of those, just because it's one of the most common questions that we get when we're pouring drinks over here, that people are always asking, okay, yeah, but how do people in Japan drink it? How should I be drinking it? And we Stephen and I both, when we answer those questions, we tend to we take it from the posture of a person who lives in Japan, or how in Japan would you enjoy these drinks? So we always talk about on the rocks, mizuwari, oyuwari, sodawari, maewari occasionally, and occasionally people are like, well, do people ever drink it straight? And, and you get to have that conversation as well. But so this is a good question right here from my eyes. Kanroku, hot or cold?
Yeah, we saved that for the hot episode.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah,
that's a good question. Thank you, Maya. So yeah. Anyways, couple episodes coming up, and with that, or no, one episode coming up. One episode that we didn't give enough attention to on our last podcast because we were doing it in the parklet out in front of what was it? It was a pork place.
Yeah, barbecue place in
DC,
right?
Washington, D.C. Yeah, and so we did a very quick episode. But anyways,
my brother and cousin.
Yeah, phenomenal. We had a lot of great craft beer. But I think the next thing and we're going to file this under Booze News, it's a bit of a recap of Bar Convent Brooklyn, which many of you will know because we talked about it in previous episodes. Stephen and I actually kind of based our entire journey into the States around that event, which had been on a 1-year hiatus. And within the trade, within the industry, the beverage alcohol industry in the United States, it's a pretty well-regarded event in terms of its, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but it's not just like a party or anything. It's actually a place where people go to learn. It's a place where people go to discover. And so we decided to go for it and try and snag a spot. We auditioned essentially for a spot there, and we got a booth, and we got an opportunity to speak. Stephen got an opportunity to speak on the main stage, made a lot of connections, and maybe we can give a bit of a recap for people around the world so that they know what that's all about. And maybe we should start with the types of exhibits or booths that were available there, who was showing off their drinks. What could you do if you were just walking around? If you had a ticket and you were walking around, what could you experience? Stephen, can you run us through some of that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So actually, I guess just to set some context, I think the biggest alcohol show in the States is Tales of the Cocktail down in New Orleans. Now, they went to a hybrid model this year where most of their talks, presentations, everything are all online. And then they had local events. There'd be a Tales tasting in Seattle or in LA or in Dallas or, different places around the country. And so that show kind of got diffused. It used to be everyone would descend on New Orleans in July when it's super hot, and you'd spend time and going around. And that's an interesting show. And it's a combination of trade and public tastings. So you have both like bartenders and bar managers and buyers from around the country, but you also have all of the public who, are just drinks fans that show up for different aspects of it. And so it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of different activities. Bar Convent Brooklyn actually originated as Bar Convent Berlin, which is a well-regarded trade show in the EU and obviously in Berlin. And then Bar Convent Brooklyn started in 2018 as a trade only show. So you have to have proof of being in the trade or media. And then for this particular iteration, for the 2021 show, you had to have proof of vaccination. and you had to be fully vaccinated. There's actually a guy behind me in line when I was registering who only had one jab, and they wouldn't let him in. So they were taking that very, very seriously.
You actually had to be 2 weeks clear of your second shot, I think was the official policy.
Yep. And I think that was a great call by the organizers. So, and the way that it worked is they have the main stage where they had, I believe, 5 talks a day. This was to an audience of up to, I think there were about 80 chairs to 100 chairs in the room. And so, and each session was about 45 minutes. And then they also had guided tastings in another room. And then they had what they called, what did they call it? Park Street University. So Park Street is a pretty well-known distributor, importer type. They're a facilitator. They're almost an incubator for new brands. And they sponsored an educational program. And the Park Street University was very much about how to become a better bartender, how to become a better bar owner, how to become a better liquor store, how to improve your service quality, how to stay safe during the pandemic, all of those kinds of topics. They were much more educational around the trade. Yeah. And then our main stage was on Koji spirits. So it was funny because we had heard that other people had gotten their speaking spots, and I thought, oh, maybe we didn't get it. And then a few days later, I got an email that said, oh, our education committee really wants your talk because we don't know anything about these Koji spirits. So we're excited. So that was a relief. And so, but then they asked me to actually put together a panel because I had proposed it simply as me as a speaker and like a Q&A sort of thing. But I think the panel was a great idea, a great call out by their education committee. And we ended up, I invited obviously Christopher to be on the panel with me, but then we also had Kenta Goto from Bar Goto, Brooklyn, and Garrett Oliver, the master brewer from Brooklyn Brewery, which was pretty cool to have all of them on the stage. But I guess maybe we'll hold off on talking about that session too much before but so I guess going back then, the other aspect is beyond these educational activities, different suppliers or importers or brands can set up booths, and basically they rent the space and they can set it up, based on the booth size and everything. And so you had like huge brands there with booths, and then you had tiny little, craft distilleries with booths, but basically places where people can go around and taste the spirits and talk with employees or founders of companies who have set up these different brands. And I was really pleased that there was a fair amount of shochu there this year. And there was actually supposed to be more. Ichiko had a booth, which I think they've been at every Bar Convent Brooklyn, and they usually have a booth at Tails as well. But then Dayame, they were supposed to have a booth. Hamada. They ended up Hamada, right? They ended up having just a big poster and a QR code scanner. And I think I don't know why exactly. I suspect that it's because they couldn't because of supply chain issues, they couldn't actually get bottles into that market. Right. They didn't have anything to sell, so they didn't end up participating. But then Mizu Shochu is actually now in the Sazerac portfolio. So they were there alongside Sazerac Rye and a number of other well-known spirits in the Sazerac pavilion, which actually had a few little tables, and they had a proper bar set up, like a wooden bar with bottles on a back bar and that sort of thing. That was a very impressive setup. Probably the nicest was the Gallo setup. I didn't really realize that Gallo was so into spirits. But Ernest and Julio Gallo, right, the winemakers in California, their spirits pavilion was like a cigar lounge. It had like leather chairs and coffee tables and artwork, and their bar was quite extensive. That was definitely the most impressive.
Where was that?
That was just next to the Sazerac one. Just down the street from the it was actually toward the doors from the emerging brands pavilion. So basically just due east of where the Honkaku Spirits booth was. Okay. So I guess and then the other shochu that was there actually was with Vine Connections. They had the Irihei ginger shochu from Ochiai, as well as I always forget the name of it, but the rice shochu. The very light rice shochu, 8,000 something. I always forget the name of it because it's got a long Japanese word name that I don't recognize. So anyway, those were all there, and then Honkaku Spirits, of course, had a booth, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we had a really well located booth thanks to some advice from somebody who knows these events very well, and most of our crew was there to talk about 4 main brands, and I think the 4 that we put front and center were Mugi Hoka, made by Tensei Distillery in Kagoshima. We also used Motoko rice shochu made by Furusawa Distillery in Miyazaki. Third in the list was Colorful. Am I right? Colorful sweet potato shochu made by Shoro Distillery also in Miyazaki. And then finally we had our Takamine Koji whiskey, which is made by Shinozaki in Fukuoka. So those we had a bunch of other things under the counter, but we fronted with those 4 as a way to introduce Koji fermented spirits from Japan to all of and it was bartenders, it was bar managers, it was buyers from liquor stores, it was buyers from restaurant groups, it was just a bunch of people from the trade, and then the occasional media folks who would come by and we'd taste them through everything. And we were at times extraordinarily busy. I mean, at times we had 4 of us each doing a tasting simultaneously and still having people looking on, in second row being like, when can I get in there? We had a lot of people who had kind of specifically marked us as one of the places they wanted to go. And then you would see people like, found you. Okay, good. It was like on their list of things that they needed to check out, and which was, Stephen and I, we've both done these things 1,000,001 times around the world. And it was very, very fun to do it in a context where people kind of actually have some sense of what shochu can be, and to talk with a bunch of very keenly interested people who really, really feel like they need to pay better attention to this category. So, it was great. I mean, I think it was especially the Tuesday, the first of the 2 days, because it's a 2-day event, and we really had some amazing connections on the Tuesday. Wednesday was a little bit more of a reunion, it felt like, but it was still decent value. But I think we felt like we got the best part of the deal out of the first day. And then what was it? We'll talk. I have a highlight maybe that we can talk about after the. I want you to take a moment to talk about, as I said at the top, the main stage. This was huge. This was the best thing about Wednesday, which was when basically we were given, Stephen was given full control of the main stage to talk about Koji spirits. And this was big for a number of reasons. He already talked about the panel, but it's also just the ability to talk in a focused manner to a bunch of people who really feel like this is something they need to get their heads around. So if you can lead us through that whole experience.
Sure. Well, I think, before I do, I'd like to talk, because I was actually at Bar Convent Brooklyn in 2018, and I did one of those focus tasting panels where it was about 20 people and everybody got to try the different shochu, and I gave a short presentation about the drinks and then answered questions, and that was overflow. That was standing room only. Okay. But it was only about 20 people. Okay. And other than that, when I was there, I was helping Ichiko and Mizu and some of the other makers. I was kind of flitting between different booths that had shochu, and I was trying to get people to try it, and just being the ambassador as I'm essentially contractually required to do. And I say hello to somebody and say, would you like to try some shochu? And they'd say, no, I'm all right. And they just keep walking over and over and over again in 2018. It was virtually no interest. Every so often somebody say, yeah, sure, why not? What is it? Is this sake? Is that whole conversation, which we've had 1,000,001 times. But this time, people were seeking it out.
Yeah, people were coming to us. Yeah, it was weird.
Right? And they were like, oh, you've got shochu? This is so cool, right? And it was the same thing was happening at the Ichiko booth, and the same thing was happening with Mizu over at Sazerac, right? Because I was flitting around. I was, again, going to the different parts of the show and talking to the different people that were trying shochu. And there was such an increased awareness in the trade for the category or categories. It was fantastic. That was really, really exciting. That's a big change in the last 3 years.
It is.
And I'm very, very glad to see it. And then the panel, I had gone when I had some edits to my slides last minute. So I went over to give my slides to the audiovisual guys. So I walked in during another one of the panels. This is the main stage. There were like 6 people there. It was horrifying. Like, how can you have a main stage topic? There's only 10 of them. You'd hope that they chose the 10 best, right? And yet there were 6 people in the audience for this session. And I felt horrible for the people on stage because there were almost as many people on stage as there were in the audience. Right. And 3 or 4 people on stage and 6 people in the audience. It was really, really disappointing to see. And I was like, well, maybe our thing's going to be a bust. And I think we were 80% full. 70-80%. We had a good, we probably had at least 50, 60, maybe even 70 people there. And it was great. Lots of questions, lots of interest. Of course, lots of familiar faces. The folks from Ichigo came to support. Jesse and Taiko from Mizu were there, but there were a lot of, bartenders and buyers who were there with lots of questions. And then a whole bunch of people came up afterward to ask questions. They didn't get enough during the Q&A. Yeah. So, I think it helps having the star power of Garrett Oliver.
It does not hurt.
Absolute legend in the craft beer world, is the brewmaster for Brooklyn Brewery since the late 80s. So he's a gem. He's a really, really wonderful guy. So, and he's very, very curious about these new drinks. He sees when was the last time you tried something new? I think was one of his. Yeah.
When was the last time you found something new to like? I think was his line. Something new.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're on right now with Shochu and Aomori. This is something new to like. It's not new. I mean, it's over 500 years old, but in the States, it's absolutely new.
Right. No, it was extremely gratifying. And then after the seminar, then our booth got flooded. Right, the Honkaku Spirits booth had lots of people there to try these interesting drinks that they just heard about. Although a number of the people in the audience were people who had already stopped by the booth. Right? They just were there to get more knowledge, which is pretty great. Sure.
Yeah.
So and then it was toward the end of the day. Wednesday is because the talk was 2:30 on a Wednesday, which is not ideal, honestly. You kind of you've got 3 or 4 hours left in the show because it ended at 7 p.m. So if people weren't aware of your product before that, they only have 4 hours to get over there and try it.
Yeah, right? And it turns into a bit of a poop storm at the end with everybody. It's a reunion, like I said, on Wednesday, and people are just getting some drinks in and maybe learning 2 or 3 things, but really they just want to socialize. So we got some good tastings afterwards, but
we did. Yeah. So it was I think it was an excellent show. I was really, really impressed with how they organized it. That they really did focus on the safety for COVID, and then the panel did much better than I expected, especially after seeing that other panel that had almost nobody in the audience. So
I feel bad for them too. Yeah, can we name drop a little bit?
I don't remember what it was.
No. I just want to say, it was later that night when you and I had probably one of the best drinking experiences of our lives at Rule of Thirds. I just gotta say this before I forget. If you haven't been to Rule of Thirds, first of all, just go. It's in Brooklyn. It's amazing. Make a reservation. Just go and experience it. And we
go with friends. Get the outdoor pavilion.
Yeah, exactly. Get an outdoor pavilion. Go with 4 to 6 people, and ask for one of their. These are pavilions that were set up because of COVID in order to be able to, serve private groups outdoors, and they're amazing. These little bungalows are fantastic. And Stephen and I shared a bungalow for a couple of hours, I think, with Garrett Oliver again, and then one Mr. David Wondrich. And if you don't know who either of those people are, then please look them up. like hit pause on the archive and then look them up. Just phenomenal human beings in every, like in the most respectful way I can say that. And we had a great time just talking about all sorts of, I mean, you can't, in 2 hours, you can't even begin to have enough of a conversation with those two gentlemen. It's just, they're some of the most fascinating people on the planet. And Stephen and I happened to corner them in one bungalow. And you could talk about the thing. Probably, I think this was mostly your idea, even the drink that we were able to concoct with everybody, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah. So Christopher knew David Wondrich through his writing. He's got some very famous drinks book. He was actually a drinks editor for Esquire for a long time. And now he's with the Daily Beast. He's essentially a drinks historian, drinks journalist. And I sadly had never read his books. However, I am absolutely obsessed with his podcast, which is called Life Behind Bars.
Yeah.
And so I just know him from the podcast, although I knew he wrote books. Of course, I acquired all of his books on the trip because I knew that I'd have a chance to meet him. But and I knew, even though Life Behind Bars is essentially a cocktail podcast, it's so much more than that, because he and his co-host Noah Rothbaum get into the history of the cocktail, who the bartender was or where the bar was in whatever city, just really, really deep dives into everything. Their rum episode should be required listening for anybody who's a rum fan, because they get deep into the history of rum and all that sort of thing. So really, really fantastic podcast that I absolutely adore. And I knew from listening to so many episodes that David's not really a cocktail guy. He studies them and he drinks them and he researches them and he writes about them, but he just wants a shot and a beer. He just wants a Boilermaker, essentially. Right? So we had Orion beer and Takamine whiskey as our Boilermaker at Rule of Thirds. Yeah,
it was awesome.
And it was special having a Boilermaker with David Wondrich. It's like bucket list check mark right there.
Yeah, and then I just picked his brain on, like, Dave, I'm going to Baltimore. What do you have for me? And he's just like, well, how much do you like dive bars? I'm like, I love dive bars. I really like them a lot. And so, he just reeled off a few of them. He's like, well, here are 3 of the best in the country, and they happen to be in Baltimore. So that was so much fun.
Did you make it to any of them?
Haven't been to one yet. No, had to rush home for this.
Going tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. Yeah. No, that was definitely a special evening with those two gentlemen, and then Rule of Thirds sort of became our
base almost.
Our office during BCB, during Bar Convent Brooklyn. I've got my T-shirt on, by the way. I don't know if you can see it. There it is.
There it is. Bar Convent Brooklyn. Only $35.
Yeah,
to the highest.
Something like that. Yeah. Might have been a little less than that, but it was not not affordable. But so we just sort of held court at Rule of Thirds, 3 times that week, I think.
I think we were there 3 times. Yeah. We did a couple of tastings there as well. So we did a staff train. No, we did 2 staff trainings and then a public facing tasting all in the same day. It was great. Rule of Thirds is, I'm not going to lie, one of my favorite places in the world. And of course, yes, they do have good shochu. They have great cocktails. They have amazing food, but it's also just a really lovely place to go and hang out, regardless of the size of your party. Now, within reason, you can't take 500 people there, but you could take 100, and they would be able to accommodate you. It's one of the most modular spaces I've ever seen in my life. It's and the quality from front to back, from east to west, and north to south is really remarkable. And George Padilla and his partner in the kitchen are just knocking it out of the park on a nightly basis. Yeah,
so, it's fantastic. I mean, their service is on point. Drinks list is great. Cocktails are great. Food is off the charts. It's really fantastic. I actually realized on this trip, I lived in New York for 16 years before moving to Japan, and I realized if I did move back to the city, I would have to live somewhere convenient to Rule of Thirds, because it's not easy to get to from Manhattan.
You're right. It's not even, well, Yeah, we're at Greenpoint.
Yep. Greenpoint. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a 7-minute walk from the expo center where BCB was, so that was easy.
Perfect.
But I think my taxi. We had another torrential rainstorm that night. The night of the
It rained, yeah, like twice. Yeah, that was another
Yeah.
torrential rainstorm. We both escaped that first hurricane. I flew to Atlanta. Where did you go?
LA.
LA. Yeah, we were both like, we have to leave early. So we both left town. I left town a night early. Did you too?
No, I took my scheduled flight.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't able to. I think I moved my flight up 2 hours or something like that. But there was very little rain at the airport that morning, so it worked out.
It did work out.
But the night before, I think it was the torrential rainstorm.
It was
at Roll of Thirds.
It was impressive,
and
it was raining inside.
I think my lift back, because I was staying on the Upper West Side, my lift back was $115, which was
$115.
Yep.
Well, okay. How much was your taxi after drinking with Philip Duff at Dublin House?
Well,
how much was that taxi? It's a flat
well, taxis rate. It's a flat rate to JFK.
Even in the rain.
So with the tolls, it was $66.
It's nothing. All right.
Yeah. The lift quote was $200 for the same ride.
Of course it was. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, they're gouging, but that's what they do. Surge pricing or whatever.
No kidding. So anyway, I think the summary on the BCB that entire week was, number one, BCB is legit, and we really appreciated that experience. I don't know if we'll ever do it again, but it was awesome. I think it was great.
It was. And
most importantly, like, I got to meet a couple of people from our team that I had never met face to face. So that was important for me. There's still one guy who has been avoiding me. And we'll make sure to fix that at some point, hopefully before the end of this month.
Guess that's what happens when you start an international trade company in the middle of a pandemic. You end up not meeting some of your employees.
That's true. And it's been awesome. So I want to move on to newly opened. I happen to be at our good friend Bruce's house, and he opened for me this bottle of red called the Arma.
The Arma.
The Arma. And I can't even begin to explain to you how good this wine is. 2008 Shiraz.
Wow.
And it is kind of bonkers. And it's not even the first great wine that he opened for me today. It's the fourth. So, and it keeps just kind of elevating. So
nice.
Absolutely bonkers. And I'm just in awe of a lot of the notes. He opened at least the last three wines that I've tasted that he opened tonight. And the previous two were at the restaurant where we had dinner. You would not believe the size of the veal I had. It was ridiculous. In fact,
do you remember the veal I had?
He made me order it just so that he could see the look on my face. I think he was cackling.
Was it the entire baby calf?
Yeah, it was pretty much the whole thing. It was bigger than a hair. It was huge.
Do you remember the veal that I had with Jamie? We went to the Italian place, the red sauce Italian place in New York.
But it was way bigger than that. It was like a mountain.
Really?
Yeah,
that was huge.
It was like it was like this tall with the bone sticking out. I was like, "Are you?" He's like, "It's fine because we're gonna bring it home, and that's gonna be my dinner for the next 2 nights." So, so that it was great. But he brought a couple of his private collection bottles to the restaurant, nice. Which we were able to open because he's very tight with the proprietor there, and and they were kind of off the charts. And then this one is just like, I don't even know where to start. This is insane. Yeah.
What is it? 100 points?
100
I
points.
think it is. I would say it's 98 points.
Wow. 98 points? 98.
It's one of the
nice. Yeah. Clearly I'm going to have to hang out at Bruce's house next time I'm in Baltimore.
Well, that's the moral of this story. Absolutely. And
yeah.
And there's lovely company everywhere you look. So
nice. Yeah. Newly opened on my front is really not much. I guess the thing I did open most recently is not Japanese, and it's. Oh, I guess you didn't do
No, I'm
Japanese
not
either.
even, not even close. Oh,
Berry Brothers and Rug single malt Irish whiskey.
Irish whiskey, nice.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to somebody while I was in the States, and I don't think Berry Brothers and Rudd actually imports to the U.S. They're an independent bottler based in London.
Right.
And they are.
No, they're just London. Yeah.
They're only London. Yeah, Bruce says only London.
But they come to Japan, which is cool. And so, yeah, and so I often, I think I've talked about this shop before on the show. There's a liquor store here in Fukuoka that specializes in Western spirits, and they've got probably 200 single malt scotches. They've got 50 to 80 rums. They've got huge American whiskey selection, and then this showed up on their Irish whiskey shelf, and I just figured I'd give it a try, and it's really, really nice. So I've actually been, I guess, enjoying it fair amount since I got home. Gone too close to half the bottle. It's an easy drinker, so really, really good stuff. So, and obviously we got our friend Matt Healy, who's got an Irish whiskey podcast, and so I've been trying to explore Irish whiskey a little bit more to understand where it fits in the context of everything else.
We're gonna need to get him on this show soon to talk about this.
I think he wants us on his show, and we've never given him a time and date when that's possible. So maybe we do that first since he invited us first.
Is this 1888? Are you for real?
Yeah, here you go.
Okay, it's getting worse.
Is he doing this to me?
1888.
He's getting out the Armagnac, 1888 Armagnac. Save me some.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
All right.
Look at the color on that. That's a coffee dark.
I'm not gonna dislike this. I don't think. It's really,
yeah, it's pretty. It's got some color on it.
This is. I think I already showed it, but just so that.
Yeah, 1888, right? Armagnac. So is that Bruce's birth year?
That was good.
It's my son's 100th year. My son was born in 1988, so this is 100th year anniversary.
100-year anniversary.
Prior to my son's birth.
You planned the birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I did actually.
Awesome.
I haven't opened it yet, but I did get
DeRose.
My birth year Armagnac, actually.
The birth year. Oh, did you?
Yep.
Oh,
so 1970.
Expensive. Sweet. That looks amazing.
I would say easily the most expensive bottle of spirits I've ever purchased.
Right.
I believe a distributor friend of ours actually had this special ordered from France. So,
for real.
Yeah. Actually, it's not the most expensive bottle. It was the most expensive bottle I'd ever purchased at the time that I purchased it. But later in the trip, I tracked down at long last the Boss Hog, which is the homage to Jokichi Takamine from Whistle Pig, and that's a unicorn of a bottle. And I found one of those in paid retail, at least what retail passes for these days, and right? that was in Chicago. Yeah, that was in excess of $500. So that one actually went into a secure liquor storage that's actually bonded and insured. That will not be coming home with me for a while.
That you need to put that one under lock and key. So, but the Armagnac you had, sorry, I missed it. Is the Armagnac more expensive or less expensive than the Whistle Pig?
Less expensive.
Okay.
It's less expensive. Yeah, it's I think, if Armagnac were as popular as whiskey, it would be more expensive, but
it should
it's not. So it should. Yeah, it's great stuff.
All right, man. This has been good. 45 minutes, and we just got our first thumbs up. I think it was. I'm not sure if it's because it sounds like we're about to end, or if it's because we're talking about incredibly hard to find spirits.
Yeah, that could be. John Go asked if there was any Germain Robin brandy at the Gallo booth, and I do not know. I did not look. I was not actually. So working the show rather than being a guest, or you don't want to drink because it's a long day, right?
It is a long day.
It's 11 to 7, and that's the opening hours. But you got to get there early to set up. You got to stay late to close. So did very little drinking at the show.
Yeah, and that was a comment on Facebook for everyone, just so that you know, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll throw it up there real quick just so that people can see that Stephen wasn't just making that up. And then also on Facebook, most of our comments are from Facebook. John Go also says this, which I think is interesting.
Yeah,
This
Tails is a highway to hell for the liver. Absolutely. And, yeah, the couple times that I did Tails, I guess a little bit like I did with where I always went to Rule of Thirds right after BCB, although that was only a couple of days. At Tails, I spend all of my time at a restaurant way far away from the French Quarter. Yeah, because the hotel was in the heart of the French Quarter where they do Tails, and so that whole neighborhood just becomes trade people drinking all night, and people are out till 3 a.m. and then wake up at 7 and do it all over again. And I don't have the constitution for that. So there's a restaurant that I adore out east of downtown that I go and hang out there when I'm at Tails. If we ever do that again, yeah. I'll let you know where it is. Cool. Chris is enjoying Colorful. I like that one. Yeah. So how's that Armagnac? Your reaction was on the positive side.
God, this is I'm kind of enjoying the nose as it warms a little bit, and it's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can wind up.
All right. So yeah, let's talk what's coming in episode 68. So in episode 68 next week, we'll have the warm Shochu episode will have become a reality. And
maybe that. And I'd like to talk about the consulate and embassy events that happened the week after.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So so we'll focus on that next week. Somebody should write that down and please message Stephen and I so we remember. Yeah.
I'll put it in our group chat.
Cool. Okay. Well, anyways, thank you everybody on both Facebook and YouTube for joining us. And for anybody who's watching this on archive, please know that you're more than welcome to ping either of us, both of us, at various. I don't know. I don't want to list everything right now because I feel like it's going to take forever. But if you listen to the Japan Distilled podcast, then you can easily find that, or just go look at the show notes. And, basically comment, question, all that stuff. If you have something you want us to focus on in a future episode, then let us know because we will focus on it if it's within our purview of anything that we're kind of nerdy about. But until then, and until we hear from you, from both of us, me in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, and Stephen in Fukuoka, Japan, thank you again, and a very hearty and heartfelt kanpai.
Kanpai.